With Frank Reynolds, Election Day 1968. Now, here is Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. The polls already have closed in some areas of the East, South, and Midwest, and some votes are now being tabulated. Reports from all over the country indicate that the voter turnout today has been very heavy. For a look at what's going on right now, let's go immediately to Howard K. Smith and ABC Election Control. Howard?
Frank, the first scattered returns have already been posted. They include the celebrated metropolises of Dixville Notch, Hart's Location, and Ellsworth, which traditionally vote 1 minute after midnight, and then to have pride of place as the first to be counted, count immediately. However, these first raw vote totals include the early returns also from a few considerable states like Kansas and Tennessee. Here's what the beginning of a record vote for the presidency looks like at this hour. Right now, Nixon leads with 20,000 votes. Humphrey is second with 12,700, and Wallace third with 7,400. But I would like to caution you that these results are so scattered, they come mostly from scattered rural areas, that they can mean absolutely nothing at all. It's fewer than 1% of the nation's precincts that have reported in. About the eventual outcome of this election, I would like to ask political editor Bill Lawrence. Bill, what do you think of the way opinion polls have changed their forecasts in the past 24 hours?
Well, Howard, pollster George Gallup is clinging tonight to his precarious forecast that Nixon was ahead by a single percentage point, as the moment of truth approaches for the pollsters as well as the politicians. Pollster Lou Harris has Humphrey ahead by 3 points. But neither was willing to forecast a definite winner on such narrow margins. ABC News, the New York Times, and some others who surveyed electoral college prospects, not the meaningless popular vote, saw Nixon ahead and likely to win unless the last-minute Humphrey surge pushes the contest into the House of Representatives or forces a deal with third-party candidate George Wallace. The final Gallup figures were Nixon 43, Humphrey 42, and Wallace 15. Harris said it was Humphrey over Nixon 43 to 40. Translated from his earlier polls, what Gallup is saying tonight is that Humphrey has gained 9,750,000 votes in about a month, while Nixon was losing 750,000. And Wallace was dropping 3,750,000 votes. Now, to veteran politicians, this seems just like too big a swing, and more likely reflects that Gallup has consistently overrated Nixon's strength at crucial times in both the convention and the campaign. Tonight, we'll try to find out. Howard?
So we begin to count votes in Election 68. 75 million people are expected to vote by the time the last poll closes in Alaska tonight. Americans will have made a new record. It used to be 71 million 4 years ago. There may be some surprises or shocks left in this election year, which ends tonight or sometime tomorrow. But what we know for sure is that when this election is over, we shall have elected a new House of Representatives, 435 members, 34 freshly elected United States senators, 21 newly elected governors, and with a little luck, we may even have elected a president and a vice president. ABC's Election 68 begins right here at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and Tom Jarrell and Frank Reynolds will be with us. Here once again is the way the Presidential Board looks at this hour.
Well, it's early, and it's going to be a long, long night. Palo Alto County in Iowa has voted for the winner in every presidential election year since 1896. And Palo Alto County has now come up with an indication of just what we might expect tonight. The Emmitsburg Democrat, a newspaper that has run an accurate presidential survey since 1952, closed its 1968 poll at noon yesterday, and at that time 485 votes were in, and the results were Humphrey, 233 votes, or 48.04%. Nixon, 230 votes, or 47.42%. Wallace, 22 votes, 4.54%. A short time after the poll deadline was reached, 5 more Nixon votes came in. If those Nixon votes had counted in the newspaper's poll, the Republican candidate would have won by 0.4 of a percentage point. That's in Palo Alto County in Iowa. In a moment, some familiar figures go to the polls.
When babies feed with ordinary bottles, air gets inside. Nipple often collapses. Air gets into baby's stomach. Not with Playtex, the nursing method most like mother herself. See, natural-shaped nipple can't collapse because as baby feeds, formula sac contracts. No air gets inside. Formula flows smoothly. Baby gets less air, more nourishment. And Playtex nurser sacs are pre-sterilized, disposable. Playtex nurser, the nursing method most like mother herself.
You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier in a Playtex Cross Your Heart bra. Its secret? This Playtex shaping crosses your heart with stretch to lift and separate. You're suddenly shapelier in a Playtex Cross Your Heart bra. You'll see. Get one and pass the word. You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier.
By the tens of millions, Americans have gone and are still going into the voting booths to register their choice for the presidency and lesser offices. The governor of New York and his wife had a smile for the photographers. Senator Edward Kennedy and his wife waited in line patiently for their turn to ballot. The mayor of Chicago was an early voter today. The political celebrities, including a former president, turned out in strength. Harry S. Truman, 84 years old, strolled from his home in Independence, Missouri, to the Memorial Building in Blue Township to cast ballot number 67 in the 27th precinct. The day was overcast. The temperature was in the 40s. It's good Democratic weather, Mr. Truman said, and he added it would be better
if it rained.
Richard Nixon flew from Los Angeles to New York City today, and tonight, with his family and friends, he will watch the election returns in a suite in the Waldorf Astoria. Mr. Nixon cast an absentee ballot last week in New York on the chance that he might not get back from California tonight until after the polls closed. Curtis LeMay voted near his home in Bel Air, a suburb of Los Angeles. A newsman asked General LeMay how he had voted, and LeMay answered, "What do you think?" Afterward, the general flew to Montgomery, Alabama, to watch the election returns with George Wallace. President and Mrs. Johnson drove 15 miles from the LBJ Ranch into Johnson City to vote today. The president cast his ballot in the model kitchen in the Pedernales Electric Co-op building, one of his early accomplishments as a young Texas congressman many years ago. Hubert Humphrey and Mrs. Humphrey cast ballots number 41 and 42 in the whitewashed, clapboard town hall of Marysville, Minnesota. It was raining and chilly, and Humphrey warmed himself beside a pot-bellied stove before voting. A newsman asked, "Are you going to win?" And Mr. Humphrey answered, "I sure am." Senator Edmund Muskie and his wife cast their votes in South Grammar School in Waterville, Maine, his hometown. Muskie said he voted a straight Democratic ticket, and he added the election is a toss-up. As Muskie entered the polling place today, about 150 anti-war demonstrators chanted slogans. The senator ignored them. George Wallace, accompanied by his mother and two brothers, drove 86 miles from Montgomery, Alabama, to his hometown of Clayton to vote. Wallace campaigned right up to the wire. He stopped his motorcade on the way to Clayton to shake hands with a group of people gathered outside a motel. Spiro Agnew, his wife, and two of their children voted in a firehouse in Annapolis, Maryland. The governor was in a serious mood, though we see him smiling happily here. He said, "I'm looking forward to a victory, but I'm prepared to lose if a victory doesn't come." Well, a good many people whose faces are not quite so familiar also went to the polls today. Maybe 75 million. We'll have a look at them in just a moment.
Hey, look at us now. We've got the winners and how. Lincoln Mercury leads the way.
Lincoln Mercury leads the way with a beautiful new Cougar for $69. Completely restyled with new power. The big cat's got a deeper V8 growl. 351 cubic inches now standard. And all the sporty ideas Cougar made famous. Flip-lid eyes. Flashing tail. buckets, stick, all standard. And now we've got it all in a brand new Cougar convertible. A beautiful new reason why your Lincoln Mercury dealer leads the way.
Drive Cougar and see how great a winner can be. Lincoln Mercury leads the way.
Before the day is over, it's estimated that about 75 million Americans will cast their ballots. The Commerce Department has compiled some interesting facts about Americans who go to the polls. For example, more men than women vote. In the last presidential election, eligible males, strange term for this category, had a 5% margin over the ladies. And the youngsters, who have been so very outspoken this political season, will, according to the Commerce Department, have the poorest voting record of all the eligible age groups. In 1964, only a little more than 50% of voters under 25 years of age cast ballots. And there is education. The more you've had, the greater the likelihood that you will vote. The range runs from a 31% turnout for those with elementary school schooling to a 71% turnout for college graduates. And there's income. The higher the income, the better the chance that the individual will take the time to vote. Also important is setting an example. If the father of the family votes, the rest of the family is likely to do so also. And finally, there's this note from the Gallup poll people. They find a greater percentage of non-voters among Democrats and independents than among Republicans. Republicans vote. Now that at least is one statistic we should be able to check out before this night is over. 2 United States senators and 45 congressmen were elected as soon as the first vote was cast in their respective states and districts. Republican Senator George Aiken had no opposition in Vermont, and Democratic Senator Russell Long was unopposed in Louisiana. But some familiar faces will be missing when the 91st Congress convenes in January. Democrat Carl Hayden of Arizona is retiring after 41 years in the Senate. Before that, Hayden was a congressman, Arizona's first, when the territory won statehood in 1912. That's 56 years in Washington. Alabama Democrat Lister Hill is leaving the Senate after 30 years. Senator Burke Hickenlooper, the Iowa Republican, is retiring after 24 years. Florida Democrat George Smathers is closing out an 18-year career in the Senate, as is Kansas Republican Frank Carlson. California Republican Thomas Kuechel lost in the primary this year and ends 14 years in the Senate. Another familiar figure not coming back after losing in the primary is Senator Frank Laushi of Ohio, a senator for 12 years. And Senator Edward Long of Missouri is leaving after 8 years in the Senate. Republican Senator Thurston Morton of Kentucky decided last February he would not be a candidate for re-election. He was first elected to the Senate in 1956. And so the United States Senate, in one sense, will lose 189 years of experience in January. In the House of Representatives, of 38 congressmen who definitely will not return, probably the best known is Republican Representative Charles Halleck of Indiana. Halleck is retiring after 33 years in the House. In a moment, guest commentators William F. Buckley, Jr. and Gore Vidal.
It took some doing, but finally we fashioned an exciting new wax for furniture polish. It's this lemon wax, which can be found only in Favor from Johnson Wax. Favor with lemon wax nourishes your furniture. Each time you dust with Favor, you see new wood lights running through the grain, darting, popping, lights you've never seen before. So be sure you know your lemons. Get Favor with lemon wax. It's good for the wood.
Hello, I'm Amy Vanderbilt. After a spring shower, the air sparkles with freshness. Have that outdoor freshness indoors with Glade Air Freshener. Use Glade throughout your home. Glade cleans your air like a spring shower.
In ABC's election coverage tonight, guest commentators Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley, Jr. will once again contribute their points of view. For this program, we have invited the liberal Vidal to speculate on what the nation might be like if Mr. Nixon becomes president, And we've also asked conservative Buckley for his views if the White House tenant should be Mr. Humphrey. First, William F. Buckley.
Will the country go to hell if Hubert Humphrey is elected president? No, at least not because he is elected president. Will the country rise and shine again if Richard Nixon is elected president? No, at least not on account of Richard Nixon's election. What then is the fuss all about? It is about something less than death for the Republic or the resurrection of the Republic. Even so, it is about something very important. It is, in the view of those who are supporting Nixon, about the necessity to encourage a fresh set of premises in American government. If we go back for yet more of the same, and it is, in a sense, to the credit of Hubert Humphrey that his innocent affair with state welfarism has developed into a lifetime attachment which he will carry to the rocking chair. If we go back, we are unlikely to see a way out of the depressing dilemmas the government has created. Why are the races unreconciled? Why does poverty persevere? Why are our governors indifferent to us? Why are the young disenchanted? Why do the birds sing so unhappily? It is easy to be carried away, and yet always there is a strain of seriousness, something in the system that warns us that America had better strike out on a different course rather than face another 4 years of asphyxiation by liberal premises. If we lose, what to do? The hippies who drop out haven't found the answer. Now that we've dropped out, says Claude in the hippie play, why is life so dreary, dreary? Answer our weary query, Timothy Leary, dearie. There is no dropping out of our centralized society. The feds want you. They want your income and your vote, and they want to take your temperature and your pulse, and they need to know how many toilets you have in your house so that the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare can recommend proper import quotas on Canadian pulp. No, Nixon won't bring paradise, but he could bring a little more air to breathe, and that's a lot, that's a lot. This is William F. Buckley, Jr., New York.
What sort of president will Richard Nixon be? Well, he will certainly be the businessman's president, just as he's been the candidate of that military-industrial complex Eisenhower warned us against. They paid $20 million for Nixon to be elected president, and he will do what they want him to do. Our current military budget is $72 billion a year. Yesterday, Nixon indicated that that budget should be raised to $83 billion, even though we are far ahead of the Soviet in all weapons, nuclear and conventional. Nixon's attitude to federal spending is characteristic. $80 billion for defense is not enough. $2 billion for the ghettos is too much. The black and the poor, some 46 million people, have been warned that he will promise them nothing he cannot deliver, and he means to deliver nothing except providing tax cuts for those who want to set up businesses in the ghettos. In other words, for every dollar he spends to help the poor, $40 will be spent to help the defense industry. There is nothing to be done about Nixon. He is what he is, and if a majority of his countrymen feel that he has their interests at heart, then the majority is as short-sighted as he is, because very soon the poor, black and white, in alliance with the young, are going to challenge the old order, and if Nixon does not respond with intelligence and compassion, then there will be such revolution in these United States as has never been seen before. And though he has promised a tough attorney general and stern federal courts, not all of the police and National Guards combined will be able to withstand the eruption of those without hope or means of redress save through violence. But presidents have surprised us before. Perhaps there will be yet another Nixon, a most unlikely Nixon, a statesman Nixon. In any case, the knowledge that Spiro Agnew might become President of the United States means that all of us will pray daily for the continued health of Richard Nixon, for once the lesser evil. This is Gore Vidal.
Burn that energy. Build a roaring thirst. Then put an ice-cold Pepsi-Cola to work. Instant sap. And nothing tastes as good as this one. Put it to the taste.
Taste that beats the others cold. Pepsi pours it on. Taste that beats the others cold. Pepsi pours it on.
I most heartily recommend Cheetos, cheese-flavored puffs. They have real cheese flavor and come in two kinds of crunches, baked to a delicate crunch and quick fried to a crackly crunch. Cheetos, cheese that goes crunch.
An American spokesman in Paris said today the peace talks scheduled for tomorrow will be postponed because of South Vietnam's refusal to participate. The talks had been scheduled to resume tomorrow under far different circumstances from last Wednesday's meeting between American and North Vietnamese negotiators. Since then, of course, President Johnson has stopped the bombing of North Vietnam and has said that representatives of South Vietnam and the Viet Cong would be free to take part in tomorrow's talks. Now, South Vietnam refuses to deal with any Viet Cong representative if the Viet Cong are there as a separate delegation. An American spokesman in Paris said today the United States is continuing to consult with South Vietnam on the problem, and he expressed hope that Saigon would soon relent and would send a delegation to the talks. No date has been set for the next session or the next conference. In Saigon, military spokesmen reported 129 enemy troops killed in fighting during the last 24 hours. The fighting is still scattered with no individual large-scale engagements. The South Vietnamese government said its troops had uncovered a few days ago a secret document issued by Hanoi ordering guerrillas, the Viet Cong, to step up their activities during the bombing halt. In Berlin today, radical students distributed the formula for making Molotov cocktails and promised there will be new demonstrations. This following the most bitter rioting yet between left-wing students and police in a year of violence. The disorders took place yesterday. The immediate cause was the students' objection to charges brought against an attorney named Horst Mahler, who has defended radical students in the past. While Mahler went before a group of attorneys for a hearing on charges of violating professional ethics, the students fought with police. ABC's Jim Burns narrates.
Students protesting the hearing marched double time on the courthouse. Most of them wore helmets and padded clothing. Many of them carried poles for use against the police they knew would be guarding the courthouse. And, of course, the police were there. Preliminary scuffling became a pitched battle. At one point, a young demonstrator mounted a water truck and turned the hose on the police. At least 150 people were hurt, many of them students like this young man. Police suffered their casualties, too. This is Jim Burns, ABC News.
Well, as it turned out, all the fighting was for nothing. At the hearing involving the attorney, Horst Mahler, his fellow lawyers ruled that the charges of unethical conduct against him were unfounded, and the charges were dismissed.
Jane! Jane, I need more nails. Jane?
Here you are.
Oh, it's you, huh?
See, you're adding a rope.
Hey, you got a cigarette?
Yeah, sure.
Switched to Raleigh filters, eh?
Decided you wanted to taste a cigarette. Well, good taste is what a cigarette's all about, isn't it? So I'm smoking Raleigh.
Those coupons are a good idea, too. That's how I got most of my tools.
Come to Raleigh Filters. Come to good taste. And remember, the famous Raleigh coupon also comes on light menthol Bel Air.
Bel Air tastes light, cause the menthol's right. Bel Air tastes light, cause the menthol's right. Just the right touch of menthol, with a white filter too.
You get a special kind of lightness when you smoke Bel Air. Special because the menthol's right.
Jordan imposed another curfew tonight on its capital, Amman, but machine gun fire soon shattered the calm. The curfew had been lifted during the day after the government put down an uprising by Arab commandos. Diplomatic reports placed the casualties in yesterday's fighting in Amman at 25 dead, 100 wounded, and 70 persons were arrested. The government says the commando group has certain ties with the left-wing regime of Syria. The floodwaters in northern Italy are beginning to recede somewhat after 5 straight days of rainfall. Rescue teams have found more than 100 bodies, and officials are afraid that more victims will be discovered after the waters recede. There has been great damage to homes, crops, and bridges. Most telephone service and electricity is out of commission. Residents in northwestern Italy received a small measure of relief today when the sun came out and shone brightly. This is St. Mark's Square in Venice, and the water level in the city of canals is now at 44 inches above normal. The level once stood at 59 inches. Venetians have been forced to use some ingenious methods of travel besides gondolas. The well-dressed citizen is usually outfitted with hip boots. One major problem, of course, is just where the flooded pavement ends and the canal begins. Despite the seriousness of the floods, Venice was harder hit just 2 years ago when the flood level hit 75 inches above normal and damaged many precious works of art. In Moscow today, the president of the Soviet Academy of Sciences said the Soyuz 3 spacecraft is designed only for orbiting the Earth, not for a trip to the moon. A Soviet cosmonaut orbited the Earth for nearly 4 days last week in Soyuz 3. A document distributed today at the United Nations at the request of Cambodia discloses that Cambodia has again refused to release a U.S. riverboat and its crew of 12. The boat was seized in Cambodian waters last July 17th. Well, that's it for right now. Howard K. Smith, Bill Lawrence, Tom Jarrell, and I, and ABC correspondents all over the country will bring you comprehensive coverage of today's elections tonight, beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Frank Reynolds. Good night.
This is a molecular model of poly-1,4-cyclohexylene dimethylene terephthalate. How about that? And I'm Joanna Barnes here to tell you what this unique molecule of Codel polyester fiber means in carpets. It's so special, it's patented. Every room in your house comes alive because carpets of Codel bounce back beautifully. Even a house full of kids can't keep Codel fiber down. That's why Codel is the fastest growing carpet fiber. If you can't remember the name Codel, ask for poly-1,4-cyclohexylene dimethylene terephthalate.
We also make 2,2,4-trimethyl-1,3-pentane diol monoisobutyrate.
But that doesn't go in carpets.
Codel fiber has bounced back. Built-in.
Count on Codel, a member of the Eastman Kodak family.
Monday through Friday in color, the ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds. This has been a presentation of ABC News.